genealogy of Luke starts with Mary and goes backwards, tracing it the other way. But what is intriguing is that it never says Mary. And that's where the confusion comes. It says in verse 23 of Luke 3, and Jesus himself began to be about 30 years of age, being, as was supposed, the son of Joseph, who was of Heli, who was of Mathat, and then it starts going backward. Now, what you have to recognize there is genealogies, for the most part, do not incorporate the name of the woman. And the reason that Joseph's name appears here is because it is normal to place him in the line through his father. Mary is not mentioned because it was not normal to trace that through the woman. But what is stated here is very unique because it says, Jesus himself began to be about 30 years of age, being as it was supposed the son of Joseph. So this genealogy does not trace it through Joseph. It says he was only supposedly the son of Joseph. And so we believe that such a statement is a statement that is attempting to be consistent with a male genealogy and yet demonstrate that in fact it is not Joseph that is the issue here, but Mary. And she, though unnamed, is there in the implication of the fact that he was only supposedly the son of Joseph.
Very good. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Hi, John. My name's Wayne. There seems to be a big problem in the church today concerning the doctrine of eternal security. Most Christians believe you can lose your salvation. Now, one of the arguments they use is Revelation 3:5, which says, he who overcomes shall thus be clothed in white garments, and I will not erase his name from the book of life, and I will confess his name before my Father and before his angels. Now, they point out two things. Number one, that overcome is in a present tense, and that means you have to work in order to keep your salvation. And they also say that God has an eraser, and he will use it to remove your name from the book. Now, please comment on this verse and also explain what Moses meant in Exodus 32:32 when he said, but now if thou wilt, forgive their sin, and if not, please blot me out from thy book which thou hast written.
Good. That's very concise, Wayne. Thank you. I love that verse in Revelation 3:5. That is the greatest verse. That's one of the best verses in all the Bible on eternal security. I don't know how those people can do that with that verse. And people say, well, you see right there, you're liable to get your name blotted out of the book. Now, I want to explain that verse. In Revelation 3:5, it says, he that is overcoming, he that is an overcomer. Now, how do you get to be an overcomer? Who wrote Revelation? John. So we ought to ask John. John, what is an overcomer? What are you talking about? What do you mean by this? Well, John will tell us that we have overcome, verse 4 of 1 John 5. John says, for whatever or whoever is born of God is overcoming the world. So the overcomers are the people born of God. And this is the victory that overcomes the world, even our what? Faith. So saving faith makes us an overcomer. Saving faith makes you an overcomer. You're born of God. So now in verse 5 of Revelation 3, we know what he's talking about. The one who is a Christian, who by faith in Jesus Christ has been born again, has overcome the world. The world is no longer his master. He is an overcomer. That's the definition of a Christian. So he says, the one that is an overcomer, the same will be clothed in white raiment. Is that conditional? Is there any other condition except being an overcomer? No. If you are an overcomer and you overcome by your faith and you are born again, then you will be clothed in white raiment. That is an absolute fact. The day will come when you enter into the glory of the presence of the Lord, and he will clothe you in the brilliance of pure and holy reality forever and ever. And I will not blot his name out of the book of life. Now, what the Lord says here is not that he will blot out our name, but what? That he will not. Now, how you can get eternal insecurity out of that, I do not know. He says, I will not do that. Now, where did he get that? No matter what you do, If you have put your faith in me and are by virtue of saving faith an overcomer, you will be clothed in white garment, which was used for very honored people in the city, for the highest honor the city could give. I promise to do that, and in no condition will I ever do to you what men do to men. I will never blot you out, but I will affirm you, I will confess you before my Father and before His angels. This is a gilt-edged guarantee that you can't lose your salvation. So when they pick on that verse, they're in real trouble. Now you're asking about Moses. And Moses is saying, oh Lord, if you don't do something with this people, blot my name out. He is really saying essentially the same thing Paul said in spirit in Romans 9, where he says, I could almost wish myself accursed for the sake of my kinsmen, my brethren, right? Israel. In other words, I could almost come to the point where I say, God, I'm so concerned about the salvation of Israel that damn me and save them. Well, that's really what Moses is saying. It isn't necessarily that he's articulating some theological concept. What he is saying is, oh Lord, my passion runs so deep. I have such a great concern for this people that I wish you'd do something for this people. And oh God, if you're not going to do anything for this people that I love, I can't bear the burden. Just eliminate me. This is the outcry of an impassioned heart. You don't find the doctrine of insecurity in that outburst of passion. There's nothing Moses says there about whether or not that could happen. He just is pouring out the emotion of his own heart. And when you want to affirm the doctrine of security, there are two passages that I would recommend to you that are unanswerable, John 10 and Romans 8. In fact, we did a rather protracted series on Romans chapter 8 on the security of the believer. Anybody, I believe, who could sit and listen to that entire series and not believe in the security of true salvation has an unwilling mind. And that may be the problem. And then I think part of the reason people believe in insecurity is because they can't explain certain people's behavior. In other words, they say, well, what about my Aunt Ethel? She came to church for a long time and then totally bombed out. And they don't know what happened. So they explain it as the loss of salvation. The Bible explained it as never having had it, right? 1 John 2:17, they went out from us because they were not of us. If they had been of us, they would have continued with us, but they went out from us that it might be made manifest they never were of us. I don't think that Revelation 3 does anything but affirm the fact that the Lord's going to do for us what He promises, a white raiment. He's going to keep us in His book forever, confess us before God and angels, and men may blot people out, but God doesn't do that. Okay? Thank you.
My name is Beverly, and I wanted to ask, does a Christian have an old nature?
Does a Christian have an old nature?
Yes.
Okay, back to Romans 6:7. All right. It's a hard thing to just explain this briefly, but I'm going to make a statement.